Hello, my name is Ricardo Casalimas, and today me and my teammates will be giving a presentation on agile transformations of three major tech companies. These three companies are Tesla, Sony, and IBM. We'll be talking about how scaled agile frameworks have transformed them into some of the world's top companies. For the format of this presentation, we are going to start with Marcus Badu, and he's going to be talking about what exactly is Agile, giving us a short intro, and he will go on to explain Tesla's Agile transformation. Following that, Pedro Diaz will be talking about what exactly is an Agile transformation, and we'll be talking about IBM's specific Agile transformation. And at the end of this, I will be talking about Sony's Agile transformation, and I will be comparing and contrasting these three companies' Agile transformations, what they do similar, what they do different, and what they have in common. So without further ado, here's Marcus Badu with Tesla. Enjoy the presentation.
Hey guys, my name is Marcus Badu, and today I'll be talking about Tesla and how they used Agile in their software development to become one of the greatest car companies today in 2020. So, we're going to be talking about the history of Agile. Just a brief history. We're going to be sorry about that, my throat is acting up. So Agile can be the story of Agile can be dated back to the late 1990s and the early 2000s. The dot-com bust, that's when it happened. It kind of left Silicon Valley and a lot of the high tech businesses in shambles in 2001. They needed a new way of short cycle iteration development, which which is now known as Agile. It is a standard that is used in a lot of the big tech companies because how good it has become and how great of a standard it is. A little background of Tesla. Uh, Tesla is an automotive company. It was founded in 2003 by a group of engineers. With their mission was basically to prove that people didn't need to compromise to drive an electric vehicle. Tesla is known for their deep software integration with their vehicles, whether it being their self-driving capabilities, the a lot of features they have within the vehicle, all the cameras that use AI technology to assist with driving and the safety of the vehicle. So Tesla is known for being the electric car company that has a lot of software and a lot of features that people have come to love. Sorry. Tesla's software development. Tesla is known. A lot of people know that it operates more as a software company rather than an automotive one. Um, they have adopted a lot of agile standards. uh, in a normal automotive company, they use long development cycles that has been well vetted. But Tesla, they follow the agile principle where they use short cycles and they constantly update and roll out features to the end user. So they were the first company that ever had this approach into the automotive field. All of the automotive manufacturers before them were doing the long developmental cycles, um, which kind of made it longer for development. With Tesla, with their new techniques, it allowed the company to be years ahead of the years ahead of the competition because they were constantly rolling out new features. They're constantly rolling out improvements and updates. They also taking a lot of feedback regularly and thriving off new ideas. Now, some of the downsides of this technique is they basically would have to they would have some problems because if you think of a normal manufacturer, they have, let's say, a year to make sure everything is in place. Rather than Tesla, they take maybe 3 months and then they bring in a new update. They try to make things more efficient to the end user. Now, with this, there's a lot of small bugs and problems that can happen just due to the fact that it wasn't vetted for the normal amount of time. But the thing with that, a lot of customers, they don't mind that because they know that they're getting a product and a car that is years ahead of the competition, and they're willing to understand and I'm so sorry. They're willing to understand, and they know that this would be one of the things that they would have to deal with. So a lot of customers, they accept the fact that there will be small hiccups and bugs, but in the long run, it still will be one of the best companies due to their software practices. So Tesla, we're going to talk about what practices and what things they use from Agile. Tesla uses principles like Agile, like Scrums, as well as sprints, daily meetings, things like that. Uh, so Scrums, they're regular meetings designed to put structure around ingesting and vetting improvements. Um, they, like I said before, they take in a lot of feedback, thriving off new ideas, which is one of their main things. If there is a problem that a lot of people tell them about, they usually go out their way to get that problem fixed and in a timely fashion. uh, they also have many features. We're gonna go into another agile practice that they're well known for. So Tesla, they do these things called user stories. I'm so sorry. Tesla takes in new requirements as user stories. These don't attempt user stories don't attempt to describe how functionality works, but instead take on the challenge of describing how the functionality will be used and what the actual customer needs. These requirements flow in the project management process, not only at the beginning, though. User stories are vetted on an ongoing basis as part of a weekly scrum. So that's a lot of things that companies, normal automotive companies, they really don't do. They just release a product, and if you wanted to ever see an update or improvement, you would probably have to wait till the next year model to see that improvement being made. Rather than in Tesla, you would buy the product, and over time it would constantly improve, constantly update, and this is why they're this is why they're one of the greatest car companies and software development companies. So Tesla's agile practices. They also, I'm sorry, my voice is going. They follow the Scrum framework and have weekly development cycles called sprints. The Scrum frameworks defines a standard set of tools that are used in weekly developmental cycles called sprints. As the name implies, a sprint is a very short time frame wherein the developmental team attempts to build a specific set of functionality based on a single user story. So basically, they would all be in a meeting and they would try to work together to find the functionality on a one thing they all set. And this is a key agile practice that most companies use to set structure to in their workplace. Sorry, let me go back. So, sprints, they're basically a quick 15-minute meeting at the start of each day to help the team to check status, ask for help, uh, also if they need clarity, etc. Before getting back to the actual work of developing the functionality. Overall progress, delivering new functionality as measured by the number of user stories that have been completed is measured as the velocity of the team. So depending on how good each scrum is, that determines their velocity. So Tesla's success can be directly linked to their agile practices, agile principles. Their software is what puts them years ahead compared to the competition. Customers understand and appreciate being able to have the cars with potential bugs rather than waiting years for similar products. Customers understand and appreciate being able to have the cars with potential bugs rather than have to wait for well vetted products. This, paired with the design and innovation that were put into these cars, allowed it to be one of the best top car companies today. Tesla is one of the best companies today because of how well they use their software and agile practices in their company to be one of the greatest companies around. Thank you. Have a nice day.
Hello there, my name is Pedro Diaz, and as part of this presentation, I will be performing a case study on the agile transformation of IBM specifically. So let's start by explaining what is actually an agile transformation. Agile transformation is the process of transitioning an entire organization to a nimble, reactive approach based on agile principles. Understanding agile transformation begins with understanding what it is not and adopting agile software development methodologies. While an organization undergoing this transformation is likely to also embrace Agile, Scrum, Lean, etc., Agile transformation is a much larger endeavor than just changing how software gets built. Instead, this is a complete transformation of the entire organization and extends far beyond product development. The goal is to breathe new life into the organization by creating an environment that embraces creativity and innovation, empowering employees and reducing unnecessary layers of management. The end result may include cross-functional or self-organized teams, a renewed focus on customer satisfaction, a reduction in processes and plans in favor of action, and increased levels of internal communication and information sharing. So now that we know what an agile transformation is, it is worth reminding ourselves what agile actually means. Agile is a set of 4 values and 12 principles. The values are things like we value working software more than we value comprehensive documentation, and we value responding to change more than we value following a plan. The principles are things like the most efficient way to communicate is face to face, and teams need to take time to reflect and adjust the way they work to be more effective, and progress is primarily measured in terms of working software. Now let's take a look at what does an agile transformation process entail. Like all major undertakings, the agile transformation process begins by designating a leadership team, setting goals, and creating a roadmap. Periodic check-ins of progress made against the roadmap and necessary adjustments are essential to keeping the project on track while still being realistic. A communication plan should accompany the tactical one to ensure the entire organization understands the objectives and is continually notified of progress against the goals. As this is such a large endeavor, smaller pilots are usually conducted before an organization-wide rollout. Assembling cross-functional teams is key, creating groups of 5-10 individuals that have enough expertise and talent between them to take on projects from inception to completion. These self-contained units are able to eliminate handoffs and the inevitable problems that arise during those transitions. Project assignment also shifts from the individual to a team approach. The team as a whole is evaluated for different projects. To make this happen, waterfall development, organizational silos, and bureaucracy must be curtailed to provide an environment that embraces agile transformation. While some of this may be done in one fell swoop, much of this is ongoing, continual assessment and improvements to continue fostering an agile-friendly workplace. This may even include changes to office layouts to collocate team members in the same physical space. Employees will also need continual coaching and professional development to make the most of organizations' agile transformation. These are new concepts and best practices for most staff, so investments in training and mentoring are key to company-wide buy-in. This includes empowering employees to work independently and solve problems themselves while also educating managers on how to evaluate and reward staff in this new paradigm. New processes must be developed and new tools and solutions may be acquired to facilitate these new workflows. Each will need ownership, training, and dissemination throughout the organization. Now let's jump into our specific case scenario and see how IBM made its transformation to Agile. Back in the early 1990s, IBM was in trouble. Its sales force was selling hardware when customers wanted solutions. It produced losses instead of profits, and for the first time, downsizing initiatives replaced lifetime employment. However, the Agile transformation was the key. A recent study of 1,500 change practitioners worldwide found that success in transformation projects hinges primarily on people rather than on technology. The study also found that about 60% of change efforts fail. The starting point for the task force was the conceptual design for the agile transformation, prepared by the executive sponsor and the task force leader and endorsed by the general manager. The task force works in the following groups: client team, platform team, solution team, maintenance service team, opportunity management team, measurement and compensation team, and cross-team issues. The groups were composed of 100 seniors, but no managers, people whose rank was in the top 10% in each of their current roles. 4 managers were in charge of coordination of agile progress and issues for their respective teams. Each team had a designated lead who had a task to develop for their areas. Between these tasks, You could find delivering customer mission critical solutions through IBM consulting and system integration services, applying new marketing approaches for the hardware and software platform businesses, making them more responsive and competitive by bringing the right expertise to the right opportunities, and positioning them for sustained profitability and growth. The functional organizations in the planned scenario were responsible for skill development, career planning, and career management, providing a critical mass of expertise and delivering resources for project or opportunity teams. The functions were client solutions, platforms, service operations, and business support. They resource projects by drawing people from the functional teams to create virtual project teams. This resource was allocated and balanced by the group of opportunity managers, based on the initial prioritization of an opportunity. The objective was to move the right people, each of whom had high skills in his or her own discipline. They moved to a project that made it through the selection process to a potential project that required such resources to properly qualify it. Also, the expectation from the virtual team was to produce better results and higher customer satisfaction, because specialists made it up with intention to bear on a complex customer need. One of the most important things to understand in an agile transformation is that leaders need to develop substantially new mindsets and capabilities. To support this purpose, the Task Force Opportunity Management team developed a process guide explaining the 9-step process, along with a quick reference card. They developed and taught samples of the process in action. In addition, IT staff installed information systems to support the process, including a database to manage opportunities and an organizational or knowledge repository, similar to today's CRM systems. Each opportunity was assigned to one of the opportunity managers to qualify the lead and acquire resources to support it. In effect, the team of opportunity managers determined the portfolio, prioritization of opportunities governed by expected financials, customers' relationship, perceived competitiveness of the IBM solution, and impact on market share. By now, lots of communication had taken place, but making the transition involved detailed planning down to the individual customer and the individual employee. Also, scripted presentation was prepared to be delivered to each customer by the current sales team. It explained what IBM was doing, why they were doing it, and why it would be good for the customer. Written FAQs were also provided, and current sales teams were trained on how to deliver the message. Also, target schedules were provided and managed to ensure rapid delivery. The transition was also defined down to the individual employee level. Also, develop complete position descriptions. Now that we know the process that IBM followed to make its transformation to Agile, we could ask ourselves why they succeeded. And many large organizations are faced with the necessity of an agile transformation, and for most, this is a major challenge. The IBM Southern California trading area successfully transformed its business in 1993 based upon the work of the task force. IBM revenue grew from about 64.5 billion in 1992 to 107 billion in 2011. According to the same annual report, pre-tax income grew from 9.6 billion in 2000 to 22.9 billion in 2011. Top management had vision and reinforced this support throughout the agile process. Therefore, they developed a conceptual design for implementation ahead of time. Also, they had the top-ranked people on the task force. They knew the as-is and could envision the to-be. In conclusion, we could say that this serves as a reminder that changes are necessary, even for the most successful companies. It is also purpose to show that troubled companies can find their way back if they are willing to reinvent themselves, if they are willing to make them functional and relevant in nowadays global economy, like IBM did it. It is not easy and smooth to achieve this. Of crucial importance is to understand that transformation is a constant and continuous process that can never end. So you must embrace the notion that when faced with tough times, your goal must be not merely to survive, but to succeed, and that success comes through leadership. The IBM's approach intends to help companies make their transformation successfully by combining technology and services for a customized solution. This can be a long and challenging journey, but outcome will be surprisingly good.
Hello, my name is Ricardo Casalimas for the people who missed the intro. In this section of the presentation, I will be talking about how Sony, and specifically PlayStation, saved $30 million in only 1 year, and how they did this was using scaled agile frameworks to transform their company. So let's start with a little bit about who is PlayStation Network at Sony. And I'm sure most people are familiar with the name, but it's important to give a little background on the company so you can understand the what led to their agile transformation and why it was successful. So PlayStation Network is a part of Sony's interactive entertainment company. That's a $113 billion company. It's a huge company. So if they can have a successful scaled agile transformation, there's no reason no other company shouldn't be able to scale as well. So the company has been around for more than 20 years and it has 150 million plus active users. So it's right in the trenches with all the other major tech companies, a lot of users. So PlayStation Network at Sony is spread out over 8 different cities around the world with over 1,000 team members between these cities. So as you can imagine, such a large group of people all over the world, one of the major challenges that PlayStation Network faces is that it's very tough to coordinate between all these teams so that they're working on the same stuff, to collaborate, that they can enhance each other's efforts on the same projects, and to align these teams with a common purpose. That was Sony's major issue with PlayStation Network. In addition to that, they just were not scaling well with the amount of people that they had and the amount of releases that they had. And they had already tried other efforts. They had tried Scrum and they had tried Waterfall, and both failed. So they needed to try something else. That something else came in the form of scaled agile framework for enterprises in the year of 2014. So the principles of scaled agile frameworks at Sony, I'm going to go over the major principles at Sony specifically because it's different for every company and you're already familiar with regular agile. So the major principle for them, which should sound familiar, is to work on what's most valuable. And for them, what they decided was most valuable was their finances, obviously the bottom line. And their first step to working on what was most valuable was being as transparent as possible with what's most valuable, which is the finances. The reason they did this is because they have all these team members around the world working, but they're just doing small tasks, and it's very hard to connect these small tasks with the final effort, which is one of the major problems that the team members had. So now every single member of PlayStation Network is completely familiar with PlayStation Network's finances, and they can see how every little task and every effort they make is directly impacting the bottom line. So that really resonates with them and helps them do better work. In addition to that, they use a weighted shortest job first method from Scaled Agile Framework that lets them prioritize on what really is the most valuable thing at the specific moment. Another principle that they had is they had to create a common goal, a common purpose to have similar objectives for every team across every city. To do this, before they used scaled agile, they had cadences and sprints and iterations all over the place. One team was doing 1 week, one team was doing 6 weeks, one team was doing 4 weeks, other teams weren't doing planning like this at all, and it was just chaos. So they decided to have an alignment of cadence between all their teams. So what they decided to do is they have a 6-part iteration, a 12-week cycle, a 12-week iteration cycle, and that 12 weeks are planned in advance with 6 different 2-week intervals, 2-week sprints per se. And because every team is now aligned with that cycle, they're able to work together far more effectively. In addition, because they all have similar objectives, that gives everybody much more decentralized power for teams, which is very good. It gives teams more control over decisions, gives them more trust, and people that are empowered and trusted usually make better decisions and do better work, especially if they have transparency, as we talked about in the first objective. In addition, it allows flexibility and much faster work output, of course. The speed of trust, they say. So there's a quote about this. Prior to scaled agile frameworks, collaboration wasn't necessarily constructive. Now, from Tokyo to San Diego, everyone speaks a common language when it comes to agile. Disparate groups work together more cohesively, and SEI has enhanced coordination between portfolio and program management activities. Another principle that they jokingly refer to, or is jokingly referred to as Scrumfall, is that they don't have a completely typical agile cycle. They instead of planning just 2-week blocks or 2-week sprints in advance before each sprint, they have a 12-week. At least they plan 12 weeks in advance, plan 6 2-week blocks inside this 12 weeks. Sometimes they plan even more ahead for another 12-week block on top of that. So that's not typically agile, but they still are. It still is much less than a waterfall development cycle with much bigger blocks. So they still are doing what works for them. In addition, they are allowing variability in iterations. They know one of the major principles of Agile is that the constant change is a constant and things come up. So they allow 15 to 20% buffers for any changes that could happen, anything they have to work on that they do not expect. And if what they do not expect doesn't come up, then they simply have a 15 to 20% extra period to work on other issues. So in an environment with many dependencies, Scaled Agile Framework really does serve as a dependency management system, improving their predictability and results. In addition to all of this, they're still aiming to build and deliver rapidly, not as rapidly as a regular Agile cycle, but they're still working in Agile learning cycles and trying to get feedback and deliver as fast as possible. So these are the principles of scaled agile frameworks at Sony. Now let's talk about some of the disadvantages and challenges that they faced when doing this transformation. So the major disadvantage, the major challenge they had to overcome was all the bureaucracy and overhead, they called it. So the one of the team leaders at PlayStation Network jokingly said that if you thought you spent a lot of time in meetings and on overhead when you did waterfall, just wait till you do scaled agile. So they're saying they're spending a huge amount of time on meetings and planning to make sure everything is planned correctly. And the other side to this, the positive side to this, is that everything is planned correctly, of course, but also that the meetings aren't for everyone. The meetings are usually reserved for the people in the middle, which are the product managers, the product owners, and the scrum masters. They're the ones that really have to connect the dots for the people between the people higher up and the people in the teams. So there is a lot of bureaucracy and overhead for those people specifically. One of the other major obstacles, probably for any company, any major company undergoing a agile transformation, is resistance to change. Employees really don't take it seriously at first. It's almost a cliche that a company just goes agile. So you do have to overcome that. There will be a lot of eye rolling, according to team leaders, but you have to just push through that. And when the success happens, people will see that it does work and they will start taking it seriously. So and the last challenge that they have to overcome is that there are, what we talked about earlier, there are a lot of organizational changes, mostly for the middle range of the company. So the higher ups, the executives, they're pretty much doing what they did before. There's not a lot of changes for them. The team members, they're working on tasks. There's not a lot of changes for them. But the people in the middle, who I refer to as the product managers, owners, and scrum masters, those are the people who have to connect that big picture from the top of the food chain to the bottom of the food chain, which are the team members, to the small tasks that they're doing, so that every small task is leading to that big picture. These are some of the disadvantages and challenges that Sony specifically faced when doing a scaled agile transformation. So Through all these challenges, disadvantages, and principles, what were the results of their scaled agile framework transformation? So at this point, they started in 2014, so it's less than 6 years or about 6 years forward. They have now 6 agile release trains, which is a max of 125 people per train. That's very impressive in only 6 years, so one per year. They have 60 Scrum teams around the world with 700 plus team members, which is also impressive because apparently they have less team members, but they are doing just as much, if not much better work. I talked about this earlier, but they do have a 2-week cadence with 12-week iterations, and they do aim for 2 major releases per 12-week iteration, which is very ambitious and is obviously working for them. In addition, they also have really adopted incremental development and continuous delivery. They're always, everything they do is ready to ship. Almost everything they do is ready to ship, ready to deliver at any time. They try to have everything ready to go, and that is definitely in line with agile frameworks and the agile mindset. This has obviously worked for them because they've shipped 350 plus major releases since 2014, since they adopted agile, and it's, as I said at the beginning, it saved them $30 million in the first year alone. So Sony has had a successful scaled agile transformation. Now let's compare and contrast the 3 companies we talked about and see what they have in common, what they have different. So all 3 companies have obviously had successful agile transformations. I hope you've learned that from our presentation so far. And they seem different. You have IBM, which is doing a lot of different things, making computers, making software. You might even have like some IBM stuff in your house, and a lot of companies have them as well. So they work with a lot of consumers and businesses. Tesla is a car company, it would seem. So how could they have anything to do with this? And Sony, when you think of Sony or PlayStation Network specifically, you just think of video games. So what do they have in common? They're actually far more alike than they would seem. All of them work with software. IBM works with a lot of things, but they also have a large amount of software they work with. Tesla is not a car company per se, it's a software company because the most valuable part of Tesla is the software they develop for their cars. And Sony PlayStation Network is working with software, which is the games we play, as well as the PlayStation Network, PlayStation Store, and everything else we interact with. In addition, besides all these similarities, they also have not had they wouldn't be considered 100% agile. They wouldn't be in the top 10 most agile companies in the world. So they all have had to adapt agile for their specific needs, and they have left some parts of agile behind. And that's a commonality you'll find in a lot of major companies, maybe not all of them. So as far as transformations go, Tesla, being a newer company, I believe it's about 15 years old, more or less, it was kind of molded from the beginning into an agile company. It didn't really have much of a transformation. It became more agile as time went on, and they adopted more of the frameworks. But they weren't a waterfall company, or they didn't try other frameworks, other methods or processes before they adopted agile. Now, on the other hand, IBM and Sony, being much older companies than Tesla, they had to choose a lot of other methods and fail at a lot of other methods before they chose agile, and they both went through waterfall. I know Sony went through Scrum as well. Other comparisons between them, iteration periods between them. This is actually a part where they differ a lot, which makes sense. So Tesla has very short agile cycles, which is following in line with agile principles. They have weekly sprints, 1 week per sprint. They follow the Scrum framework with these, and this does have its pros and cons. It brings a lot more bugs and issues, as we talked about earlier, but it does have faster development and feedback, which is very important for them. IBM, I would say, is in the middle of both companies. They have shorter cycles than Sony, not as rapid development as Tesla. They say they aim for 2 to 6 week cycles. And Sony, which I talked about, has 12-week cycles with 6 2-week iterations inside of each cycle, and sometimes they plan even further ahead than that. So they are definitely the least agile when it comes to iteration periods. But what they have in common is that they focus on the same stuff. They focus on what is bringing their company the most value. They focus on their major value streams, and they prioritize this. And this is probably one of the major reasons they've all had successful transformation. All 3 of these companies have all aligned their teams to focus on what brings them the most value in true agile fashion. And that, of course, is one of the principles that is at the center of most successful agile transformations. So to conclude, we've learned that agile transformations can obviously work for different companies who may be more alike than they seem, but agile transformations are not one size fits all. Each company has to adopt agile for its specific culture and needs. Iterations, planning, processes, specific details differ greatly between different companies, but what stays the same between these companies is usually the major agile principles, such as alignment of purpose between all the teams, focusing on the right goals, the goals that bring value, and continuous development and incremental and continuous delivery and developing in yeah. Each company also has its unique challenges, but apparently if they stick the course and follow the process, they too can have wildly successful agile transformations as we have proven. Thank you very much.